Have you ever felt the parched sting of thirst? The desperate craving for just one clean, cool sip? Imagine a world where that sip wasn't a given, where the very source of life, water, was a silent threat. We've been told a story, a comforting tale of medieval peasants quaffing ale from dawn till dusk, escaping the perils of tainted water. But what if that story, so widely believed, is simply not true? Did medieval peasants really drink beer all day because water was unsafe? What did they actually drink to survive in a world without modern sanitation? And how, in a time devoid of boiling kettles or sophisticated filters, did they manage the omnipresent risk of waterborne diseases? Tonight, we journey back in time, not to a caricature of the past, but to the lived reality of those who tilled the earth, built the cathedrals, and navigated a world brimming with hidden dangers and surprising ingenuity. We will uncover the real historical data, archaeological evidence, and scholarly research that finally answers these questions, citing authentic sources that paint a far more nuanced and, frankly, more human picture. The sun beat down on Alara's calloused hands as she knelt by the village well, its stones worn smooth by generations of use. Her throat was dry, a persistent ache from hours spent in the fields, the dust clinging to her brow like a second skin. She knew the tales, the whispers of sickness carried on unseen currents, the fear that tightened in her gut when the stream ran sluggish and clouded. But what choice did she have? The cool, clear liquid she drew was life itself, a primal connection to the earth beneath her feet. It wasn't the amber glow of ale, nor the rich crimson of wine. It was simply water, and in its purity lay a fragile hope, a silent prayer for another day. Her gaze drifted to her youngest, barely 5 summers old, playing innocently near the well, mimicking her mother's every movement. How could she protect him in a world where the very act of quenching thirst was a gamble? For centuries, a persistent myth has flowed through our collective consciousness. Medieval peasants, due to unsanitary conditions, drank beer as their primary beverage. This charming, if inaccurate image conjures up robust villagers perpetually tipsy, immune to the woes of dysentery. It's a comforting fiction, one that simplifies a complex reality into a quaint historical vignette. But let us pause and truly reflect on this narrative. Does it truly align with the daily grind of back-breaking labor, the meticulous rhythms of sowing and reaping, or the demanding journey of a pilgrim traversing vast, often desolate landscapes? Can we truly imagine entire communities, from the tender age of childhood to the twilight years of old age, existing in a perpetual state of mild inebriation? The very notion crumbles under the weight of logical scrutiny and historical evidence.
The myth of the beer-swilling peasant. The idea is seductive, isn't it? A world where the pub was the safest place for hydration, where the tavern keeper was also the town's unintentional public health officer. But consider the harsh reality. Brewing beer was a labor-intensive process, demanding significant resources. It required vast quantities of grain, barley, oats, or wheat, which were also staple foods essential for survival. It needed fuel for heating, often precious firewood or peat, and dedicated time for malting, mashing, fermenting, and storing. These were precious commodities for any peasant family, where every grain of barley counted and every hour of labor was a matter of life and death. While low-alcohol small beer, sometimes referred to as table beer, certainly existed and was consumed even by children due to its perceived safety over standing water, it was far from the sole or even primary source of hydration. Its caloric value was its main draw, particularly for those engaged in arduous physical labor. Dr. James B. Given, a prominent historian of medieval Europe and author of works like Society and Homicide in 13th century England, has meticulously documented the economic realities of peasant life, revealing that such continuous, high-volume beer consumption would have been an economic impossibility for the vast majority of the population. The daily calorie needs of a working peasant were immense, often exceeding 3,000 to 4,000 calories. While beer could contribute to this, a diet solely reliant on beer for hydration would have been nutritionally deficient and prohibitively expensive. Furthermore, archaeological digs across medieval European sites consistently uncover evidence of sophisticated water management systems, not just massive breweries dominating every village. From simple, hand-dug wells to elaborate cisterns and conduits, the efforts to secure clean water were extensive and indicate a fundamental reliance on it. This contradicts the picture of a population turning their backs on water in favor of alcohol. Medieval account books and monastic records, too, show that while beer was brewed and consumed, its production was carefully managed and its consumption often tied to specific meals or tasks, rather than being an all-day, all-purpose drink. For example, monastic chronicles detail rations, and while ale was often part of them, water was always the fundamental, underlying source of hydration. A world without modern filters. Imagine for a moment, if you will, stepping back in time. Imagine a world devoid of the comforting hum of a water treatment plant, without the unquestioning trust we place in municipal pipes that deliver filtered, chlorinated water directly to our homes. How did they survive? How did they quench their thirst without succumbing to the invisible threats lurking in stagnant pools, in streams contaminated by livestock, or in wells near refuse pits? The very act of living, of drinking, was fraught with a silent danger. The sheer resilience of humanity, then as now, is breathtaking. They observed, they adapted, they learned through generations of harsh experience. They recognized patterns, associating certain water sources with illness and others with vitality. This wasn't scientific understanding in the modern sense, but it was a practical, life-saving knowledge passed down from parent to child, from elder to community. Consider the daily fear, the uncertainty that must have gnawed at them. A sudden fever, a violent sickness could sweep through a family, a village, and with no understanding of germs, it often felt like a cruel, arbitrary punishment from fate. Yet they persevered. They found ways. The profound truth, often overshadowed by the pervasive beer myth, is that medieval Europe was not a barren wasteland devoid of clean water. On the contrary, natural springs bubbled forth from the earth, fresh-flowing rivers crisscrossed the landscape, and abundant rainfall descended from the skies. These were the primary lifelines. Professor Richard Britnell's extensive work on medieval English economic history, particularly in his book The Commercialization of English Society, 1000 to 1500, highlights the ubiquitous presence of wells in virtually every rural community. These were not just crude holes in the ground. Many were meticulously constructed, often lined with stone or timber, and maintained communally, reflecting their vital importance. Villagers understood the need to keep them clean, even if their methods were rudimentary by modern standards.
In urban centers, where populations were denser and the risk of contamination higher, ingenuity led to remarkable infrastructure that often predates what many might assume. Consider London's sophisticated conduit system, a marvel of medieval engineering, established as early as the 13th century. This network of lead pipes transported fresh spring water from sources like the Tyburn Springs, Hampstead, and Highbury directly into the city. Public conduits, often adorned with fountains, made clean water accessible to its inhabitants, greatly reducing reliance on polluted river water or shallow, contaminated wells within the city walls. This was not a luxury exclusively for the elite. It was a fundamental necessity for a thriving populace, a public health measure driven by practical needs, as meticulously detailed by historians like Mary de Lobel in her work on London's urban development.
Similar systems existed in other major European cities, from Paris to Siena, demonstrating a widespread recognition of the need for clean water infrastructure. The citizens of Siena, for example, had an elaborate network of underground tunnels, or bottini, constructed from the 13th century onwards to channel water from distant springs into public fountains within the city. Young Thomas, barely old enough to carry the heavy bucket without stumbling, would trek with his mother to the village spring, nestled beneath the ancient oak whose branches seemed to touch the very sky. The path was worn smooth, a ribbon of compacted earth leading generations to this vital source. The water, cold and clear, tasted of earth and life, a clean, sharp taste that settled deep within his throat. He'd seen his younger sister, Agnes, her little body racked with the violent belly sickness after inadvertently drinking from the stagnant puddle near the sheepfold, drawn by a child's innocent curiosity. Their mother, her face etched with worry during those long nights of fever, had always insisted on the spring water, a lesson learned through generations of trial and heartbreaking error, a primal knowledge passed down through the bloodline. The spring was a sacred trust, a gift from the earth, and they guarded its purity with vigilance. But what if the unseen pathogens, the invisible killers that medieval people had no name for? While they lacked a germ theory, they were acutely aware of the relationship between a water source and health. They instinctively understood that cloudy, foul-smelling water was dangerous, and clear, flowing water was safer. They observed which wells were sweet and reliable, and which led to sickness. Dr. Carol Rawcliffe's research into medieval medicine, particularly her work on health and disease in medieval England, reveals a practical, albeit empirical, understanding of hygiene. While they couldn't articulate why certain practices worked, they learned that they worked. They understood the importance of locating wells away from latrines and refuse pits, even if their understanding of contamination was rudimentary. Furthermore, it's crucial to acknowledge the concept of natural immunity. Generations living in a specific environment developed a certain level of resistance to local waterborne bacteria. This phenomenon, often studied by environmental historians and medical anthropologists, meant that populations, through constant exposure from infancy, built up some resilience to endemic strains of pathogens. It wasn't perfect, and devastating outbreaks of dysentery, typhoid, and cholera certainly occurred, but this evolved immunity contributed significantly to their survival in ways we often overlooked in our modern sterilized world. For those new to an area, or those with weakened constitutions, the risks were still considerable, but the general populace had a baseline level of adaptation.
Travelers' accounts, like those found in the chronicles of medieval pilgrims such as Marjorie Kemp or the anonymous accounts of crusader journeys, frequently mention stopping at natural springs, rivers, and even established public fountains for refreshment, rather than relying solely on alehouses or taverns for hydration during their long journeys. For a traveler, carrying a substantial amount of beer would have been cumbersome and impractical. Finding a clean water source was a far more pressing concern. The widespread network of wells and springs along pilgrim routes and major roads attests to their critical importance for all who traversed the medieval landscape. Monasteries, strategically located near water sources, also provided a crucial stopping point for travelers seeking a safe drink. The role of beer, therefore, was not as a water replacement, but as a calorie-rich supplement, a liquid bread. For laborers engaged in physically demanding work, plowing fields, constructing buildings, mining ore, or weaving cloth, small beer provided essential energy and some nutrients. It was a foodstuff as much as a drink, often consumed with meals. Imagine a medieval farmer toiling in the fields from dawn till dusk under a relentless sun, burning thousands of calories. A thin, watery ale offered a welcome, albeit minor, caloric boost, preventing fatigue and aiding recovery. Its low alcohol content meant it could be consumed in larger quantities without severe intoxication, allowing continued work.
But it's crucial to remember that beer was often a more costly drink than free water. Grain had to be grown or bought, brewed, and stored. In towns, beer was frequently taxed by local authorities, making continuous high-volume consumption prohibitive for many, particularly the poorest segments of society. The economics simply did not support a beer-all-day lifestyle for the average peasant. Records from medieval guilds and households often show meticulous accounting for grain used in brewing, indicating its value. Cultural perceptions also played a significant role. While nobles certainly enjoyed wine, often mixed with water, a common practice even into later centuries, as noted by historians like P.D.A. Harvey in Medieval Gardens and other works exploring daily life. Peasants approached hydration with a pragmatic focus on sustenance and survival. Wine, especially quality wine, was a symbol of status and wealth, a drink for feasts and special occasions. Beer, for the common folk, was a workday beverage, a part of their caloric intake. Water, however, was life itself. It was the fundamental necessity, respected for its ability to sustain and feared for its potential to harm. There was no cultural stigma attached to drinking water. Rather, there was a deep-seated understanding of its necessity. Brother Michael, bent over ancient manuscripts in the scriptorium, the scratching of his quill the only sound in the hushed chamber, often paused to sip from his wooden goblet. It held water, drawn from the monastery's deep well, famed for its purity throughout the region. The well was a testament to their foresight of their founders. Dug deep into the bedrock, its water cold and invigorating. He'd heard the whispers of travelers who sought refuge at the abbey, their stories of finding clear springs in unexpected places along their arduous journeys, and the profound gratitude in their voices for a simple, clean drink after days of questionable sources. For all their hardships, the ingenuity of common folk in securing this most basic necessity, water, often humbled them. Their intuitive knowledge of the land, their understanding of where water gathered, where it flowed pure, was a form of wisdom as profound as any he found in his illuminated texts. They knew the taste of good water, the feel of a truly quenching drink, a luxury that many in our time take for granted. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to drink from a spring untouched by modern filters, to taste the earth's raw offering, unadulterated by chlorine or pipe systems? The experience would be a stark reminder of our fundamental dependence on this precious, life-giving resource, a connection to a primal need that modern convenience often obscures. Imagine the sensory experience, the chill of the pure spring water, the subtle mineral taste, the feeling of absolute refreshment after a long day of labor. This was the reality for medieval peasants, a reality far removed from the romanticized image of endless ale.
Resilience and reverence. The story of medieval drinking habits is not one of constant inebriation, but one of profound resilience, ingenious resourcefulness, and an intimate understanding of their environment. It's a testament to human ingenuity in the face of profound challenges. They learned to identify safe sources through observation and generational knowledge, to harvest what nature provided through simple yet effective technologies, and to adapt to a world without the conveniences we now take for granted. Their efforts to secure clean water revealed a deep, practical wisdom born of necessity. They didn't have the scientific explanations, but they had the keen observation and the drive to survive. Their challenges highlight our own incredible fortune. Today, clean, potable water flows freely from our taps, a luxury unimaginable to most of our medieval ancestors. We rarely have to consider the source, the journey, or the safety of the water we consume daily. Let their story serve as a powerful reminder of the immense value of this essential element and the endless stories hidden within the unassuming facets of history. The subtle wisdom of a peasant choosing a pure spring over a frothy tankard, the meticulous effort of building and maintaining a communal well, the foresight in constructing elaborate city conduits,
These acts speak volumes about their survival, their knowledge, and their unwavering connection to the very earth that sustained them. They teach us that even in the darkest ages, human ingenuity found a way to thrive, to protect, to build, and to adapt. Their lives were not easy, but they were rich with a practical understanding of the world, a deep reverence for the life-sustaining elements, and an incredible capacity for survival. And in that moment, something profound settles within us, a deeper appreciation for the silent victories of everyday life in a world so different from our own. It's a moment of connection across centuries, a shared humanity rooted in the most basic of needs, the need for a clean, life-giving drink. Their story isn't just about water. It's about survival, about common sense in the face of adversity, and about the quiet heroism of ordinary lives. Do you have a personal experience that makes you appreciate clean water today? Perhaps a moment of thirst in a challenging situation, or a reflection on how modern infrastructure impacts our lives? Share your thoughts below. We read every comment, and your perspectives enrich our collective understanding of history and the present. What other historical myths do you think need debunking? Or what other everyday aspects of medieval life intrigue you? If you found this journey into the surprising reality of medieval life insightful, if it challenged your preconceptions and sparked your curiosity, please like this video, subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the past, and share it with those curious about the untold stories of history. Your engagement helps us continue to uncover these forgotten truths, to illuminate the lives of those who came before us, and to connect with the human spirit across the ages. Join us next time as we explore another fascinating, often misunderstood aspect of life in the forgotten ages. Thank you for journeying with us through time.